March 11, 1944. Paris, 11 in the morning. The chimney of an apartment house on Rue Le Sueur in the 16th arrondissement begins spewing thick black smoke and a smell that is unmistakable, even to civilians, as the smell of burning meat. A neighbor calls the fire brigade. The fire brigade tries the front door, finds it locked, and circles around to break in through the cellar. The cellar is full of bodies, not buried, not hidden, stacked, dismembered, sorted by limb. A coal furnace at the far end of the cellar is glowing red and ready to receive the next load. The fire brigade calls the gendarmerie. The gendarmerie counts the bodies and stops counting at 27. The owner of the house, a respected 47-year-old doctor named Maurice Patry, arrives on foot an hour later, calm, in a wool overcoat. He greets the senior gendarme by name. He leans in and whispers something into the gendarme's ear for almost a full minute. The gendarme writes nothing down. The gendarme tells his men to step away from the building. Maurice Patry is permitted to walk back into the street unaccompanied. This is the city of Paris under Nazi occupation. The headquarters of the Gestapo is 4 city blocks from the front door of Dr. Patry's house. 2.5 years later, in May of 1946, Maurice Patry will go to the guillotine. The forensic doctor, who is required by law to witness his execution, will write afterward that Patry walked to the blade as if he were walking into his office for a routine appointment. By that time, French investigators will have recovered 80 suitcases full of his victims' clothing from a barn in Auxerre, nearly 2,000 items of clothing, including a single pair of boys' pajamas in the size of a 7-year-old. How does a respected Parisian doctor build a private extermination room 4 city blocks from the Gestapo headquarters for almost 3 years and have no one notice? And what was the first thing Maurice Patry whispered to the policeman on the morning the chimney caught fire? Maurice Patry is born in 1897 in the small French town of Auxerre, 100 miles south of Paris. He is a strange child by every report from the people who survive him. He wets the bed late, he sets fires. He removes baby birds from their nests and blinds them with a sewing needle so he can watch them throw themselves against the bars of a cage trying to find an exit. He is expelled from school after school. At 16, he is caught stealing letters from a postal box and is examined by a court-appointed psychiatrist who classifies him as an abnormal youth, whose responsibility for his own actions is limited to a large degree. The charges are dropped. In January 1916, he is drafted into the French army and sent to the trenches. He is wounded. He is Getimas. By 1918, he is diagnosed with shell shock and is also under investigation for stealing morphine from his own field hospital and selling it. The French army concludes the drug theft is a symptom of his mental illness rather than a crime. He is discharged with a full disability pension. In December 1921, he graduates from the Faculté de Médecine in Paris with a fast-track medical degree. He opens a country practice in Villeneuve-sur-Yonne, in the same département where he was born. He distributes leaflets praising his own skill. He gathers patients quickly. In 1927, the town elects him mayor. That same year, he marries a young woman named Georgette. They have 1 son. Over the next 6 years, he is investigated 3 times. Once for the death of a young female patient who never woke up from a tooth extraction. Once for trafficking in opium. Once for stealing a science textbook off a bookstall on the Boulevard Saint-Michel during a visit to Paris. For this 3rd charge, he is committed to a private psychiatric hospital for 7 months and discharged as cured. In 1933, Maurice Patry resigns as mayor, packs his wife and son into a black Citroën, and moves to a townhouse in central Paris. He begins to advertise his medical practice. For 6 years, Maurice Patry is a respectable Parisian general practitioner. Then France declares war. The German army marches into Paris on June 14, 1940. 3 days later, the city is officially placed under Nazi occupation. By August, the Gestapo has set up its main French headquarters at 84 Avenue Foch, 4 city blocks from Maurice Patry's home on Rue Le Sueur. In the autumn of 1941, the French collaborationist government begins formally rounding up Jewish citizens for deportation to the death camps. Paris becomes a city in which a Jewish family who has lived in the same apartment for 3 generations can be marched out of their flat at 4 in the morning and never seen again. It is in this environment that Maurice Patry, quietly, to a few clients at first, Then, through a network of trusted contacts, begins offering an extraordinary service. He claims to be operating an underground escape network with connections through occupied Spain and from Spain to Argentina. He charges his clients only the cost of the journey. They must arrive at his townhouse on the night of departure in heavy travel clothes, carrying with them whatever currency, jewelry, and family heirlooms they intend to use to start their new lives. His first known client is a Polish-Jewish furrier named Jakob Grinfeld, who pays Patry with 5 matching sable coats valued at 40,000 francs. A few weeks later, Grinfeld's family in Łódź receives 3 handwritten letters from him, postmarked Buenos Aires. The letters describe his new apartment, his new shop, his new Argentine wife. The letters are warm, the letters are detailed. The letters are written in Jakob Grinfeld's own handwriting. Maurice Patry has forged every word. Jakob Grinfeld never left the basement of the house on Rue Le Sueur. Over the next 30 months, the same arrangement is repeated by the most conservative estimate, 27 times. By less conservative estimates, at least 50, possibly more. Some of the clients are wealthy Jewish families paying in jewelry and gold. Some are German army deserters trying to disappear before the Gestapo finds them. Some are wanted French criminals seeking new identities. The one thing they all share is that they arrive at the townhouse on Rue Le Sueur carrying everything of value they own, that they walk in through the front door, and that none of them ever walks back out. Patry takes the money, Patry takes the valuables, and Patry keeps the suitcases. The townhouse at 21 Rue Le Sueur is a former servants' building tucked behind a much grander main residence. It has not been lived in by anyone for over a decade. The main floor is choked with mismatched furniture and porcelain ornaments, most of it later presumed to be belongings stolen from his clients. The rear courtyard is enclosed on all sides by a stone wall 10 feet high. The neighbors cannot see into it. In the former carriage house, Maurice Patry has installed a small private medical office, crisp white walls, a polished examination table, a wash basin. Immediately beside the medical office, accessible only through a door that locks with a brass key Patry keeps on his person at all times, is a small chamber shaped like a triangle. The triangular chamber is empty, except for 8 iron rings bolted into the wall. The door has no handle on the inside. A spy hole drilled through the wall offers a perfect view of the iron rings. In the rear garage of the house, behind a tarp, a pile of quicklime 4 feet deep containing fragments of human bone and partially decomposed flesh. In the former stable, a manure pit half filled with lime and the remains of at least 19 separate people. On the staircase between the main floor and the basement, a coarse sack containing the upper half of a headless corpse, and beside it, a hatchet still caked in dried blood. In the basement, at the foot of the staircase, a coal furnace large enough to fit a body of average adult size. It is into this house, beginning in 1941 and continuing without interruption for 30 months, that Maurice Patry leads his clients. He performs a brief medical examination. He offers them a vaccination against tropical diseases endemic to South America. He guides them into the triangular chamber and locks the door behind them. Then he watches through the spy hole. In March of 1940, one of his clients is a German Jewish family named Klein who have fled to Paris from Frankfurt. The father, the mother, and their 7-year-old son. The boy's flannel pajamas, the wrong size for any adult, will be found 2 years later, neatly folded inside numbered suitcase 58 in a barn near Auxerre. That single pair of pajamas will become the piece of evidence at trial that breaks Maurice Patry's defense apart completely. March 11th, 1944, just after 11 in the morning. A pedestrian on Rue Le Sueur notices the chimney of number 21 spewing thick black smoke and the unmistakable smell of burning meat. The fire brigade arrives. They break in through the cellar. By the time the gendarmerie arrives, the firemen have already counted 27 bodies stacked beside the coal furnace. Maurice Patry walks up to the scene at noon, on foot, in a wool overcoat. He greets the senior gendarme by name. He leans in and whispers for almost a full minute. What Maurice Patry says exactly is never entered into any official record. What is known is that he claims to be a senior officer of the French resistance, that the bodies in the cellar are pro-Nazi collaborators executed by resistance courts, and that any further investigation of the property must be conducted with extreme discretion in order not to compromise an active wartime intelligence network. The gendarme tells his men to step away from the house. Maurice Patry is permitted to walk back into the street unaccompanied. By nightfall, he is on a train to Vichy. The next morning, the newspaper Rue Le Sueur publishes a brief story explaining that two homeless vagrants had broken into the house on Rue Le Sueur and burned to death while attempting to warm themselves beside the furnace. There are no follow-up articles. For the next 6 months, under the assumed name of Capitaine Henri Valois, Maurice Patry publishes a series of articles in the clandestine resistance magazine Resistance, defending himself as a wronged French patriot. In August 1944, the Allies liberate Paris. In November 1940, a French army intelligence officer arrests Maurice Patry on a metro platform in the Place de la République. He is wearing a stolen German army officer's wool coat. He has 18 separate identity documents in his pocket, 3 of which belong to people who have been missing for almost 3 years. He is taken to La Santé prison. He requests a copy of Rue Le Sueur. Maurice Patry's trial opens on March 18, 1946, in the Cour d'assises of the Seine. The state has by this point recovered 80 separate suitcases from a barn near his ancestral home in Auxerre. The contents, nearly 2,000 items of clothing, are arranged in the courtroom on a long folding table. Men's overcoats, women's silk dresses, children's school uniforms, German army officer caps, 22 used toothbrushes, 7 pairs of eyeglasses, each ground to a different prescription, a single boy's flannel pajamas in the size of a 7-year-old. The prosecutor holds up the boy's pajamas to the jury and says only one sentence: "These belong to the Klein family." The defense does not recover from that sentence. Maurice Patry, dressed in a black wool suit and reading glasses, testifies for 6 full days. He confesses to 19 of the 27 murders. He claims that every one of the 19 was an enemy of France, Nazi collaborators, German agents, members of the Vichy secret police, and that he personally executed each of them on the orders of the French resistance, with whom he claims to have been operating for the entire war. Not a single resistance officer takes the witness stand to confirm this. On day 5 of the trial, the court adjourns to Rue Le Sueur for a site inspection. 300 Paris policemen are stationed outside the building to hold back the crowd. They fail. Spectators force their way into the house in waves. The jury enters the triangular chamber in 3 shifts, because all 12 cannot fit inside at once. In front of the manure pit, Maurice Patry collapses. He later tells the court that he had simply skipped breakfast. On April 4, 1946, after deliberating for less than 3 hours, the jury convicts him of 26 counts of premeditated murder. When the bailiff opens the holding cell door to escort him out for the verdict, Patry is found asleep on his cot. His appeal is rejected on May 15, 1946. On the cold dawn of May 25th, he is led into the courtyard of La Santé prison and beheaded by guillotine. The forensic doctor who is required by law to witness the execution, a man named Albert Paquet, who had personally identified the partial remains of 10 of Patry's victims from the manure pit, wrote afterward in his case file the only line he ever wrote about Maurice Patry that was not technical or clinical. "For the first time in my entire career, I saw a man leaving death row not merely composed, but easy. He walked to the guillotine as though he were walking into his office for a routine appointment." The total number of people Maurice Patry murdered between 1941 and 1944 has never been determined. Forensic anthropologists could positively identify only 10 sets of human remains from the quicklime pits, the basement furnace, and the manure pit combined. Dr. Paquet's official report to the court contains a single sentence that haunted him for the rest of his life. The number 10 is vastly inferior to the real one. If you want to understand the only serial killer in modern European history to operate inside an active occupied war zone, and the man whose techniques would later be studied by a very different kind of state-sanctioned killer one country over, watch our next case, because some monsters are not stopped by war, some are made entirely possible by it.